You are listening to the Space-Tastic Mysteries podcast. We are continuing Anna Gale Lyne's fourth novel in the Jaguar and Peacock series, Smoke and Mirrors. A deadly sniper stalks the stars. Aboard the Freedom Alliance's frontline StarVessels, crew members are being picked off one by one, the killer striking with chilling precision. When a member of Colonel Jessa Master's team is critically wounded, the threat becomes personal and impossible to ignore. Jessa is no stranger to danger, but this case rattles her. The sniper's methods seem hauntingly familiar, echoing a nearly forgotten nightmare from 9 years ago at the Freedom Alliance admission office, a tragedy she has tried to bury. Is it the same killer, back to settle unfinished business? Or is she chasing shadows conjured by her own haunted memory? This is episode 11, Android or Human? If you have not subscribed, do so now, and hit the bell to be notified of new episodes.
I wrinkled my nose as if smelling manure. Jag, I am sorry. I thought you knew. I shot him a pleading look. I thought you were there when Reggie was born. I was in the delivery room with you, Ben, Joey and Colin, but Dr. Meadows kicked us out, Nate began, scratching his head. Ben came out a few minutes later. He started pacing the floor. When I asked him what was wrong, he kept repeating, I don't know. I just know it's bad. I had trouble keeping my blood pressure down, and I developed eclampsia. I clamped my eyes shut and took a deep breath. I went into convulsions. That's probably when she started kicking people out. Ben said that when she kicked him out, her face was so white that it scared him. That's why you were pushing me away, wasn't it? You are afraid it's going to happen again. I pursed my lips together. Afraid? No. I shook my head. More like terrified. He put his arms around me, whispering in my ear, I may be new to this husband and father thing, but I am not going to lose you and the babies. I just got all of you. I wished I could believe him. I wanted to believe him, but I remembered all too clearly what happened 9 years ago and how blessed Reggie and I were to be alive. Things like this were out of Nate's control. I think that your brothers might be causing your anxiety. They were around the first time, if I remember correctly, I heard Nate say, realizing that he had been talking, and I hadn't been listening. I only caught the last part. Twisting my mouth, I agreed, now that I think about it, I was dealing with the aftermath of the shooting too. I lifted my head from his shoulder, looking at him. Same elements. Same situation. I grimaced. Not necessarily, he answered, cradling my face with his hands. We know the elements that are causing your stress this time. We just have to steer clear of those things. That's possible where my brothers are concerned, but what about Malcolm Danes? I declared, rubbing my neck. I need to know once and for all if he's dead or alive. If that's what it takes, that's what we will do, Nate concluded, hugging me again. Both of us spent the rest of the afternoon, talking to our contacts about Malcolm Danes and his twin. I remember you, the dark-skinned doctor with short black hair exclaimed as she appeared on the screen of my computer even later that afternoon. You were there that day when Malcolm Danes shot up the admissions office of the Freedom Alliance Academy. I sat in the chair behind my desk. I imagine that you go to thousands of those calls, I countered, tilting my head. I leaned back, putting my hand on my stomach. Why do you remember me? She doubled over in laughter. I will never forget that day. I have gone over the details so many times in my head, morning, noon, and night, she informed me, making a pained expression. I will never forget how distraught you were when I told you that Malcolm Danes was dead. Was he? I regarded her, my body stiffened in apprehension. I've been trying to track you down for years. I wanted to tell you what happened, but I didn't have your name. She picked up a glass of water that sat on her desk, peering over at me. Do you know how hard it is to track down a dark-haired Freedom Alliance officer? I tried to find your name in the media coverage to no avail. She sipped the water, then replaced the glass. I shrugged. General Graham thought it would be better that way. I leaned forward, folding my arms on the table. I held her in my gaze, trying to read her facial expression. The lack of excitement in her pupils and the bags that laid under her eyes indicated something was bothering her, probably keeping her up at night. What happened that day? Her face grew pensive, chewing on her bottom lip. She was definitely nervous about something. Maybe even withholding information. Whatever happened between the time she was tracking me down and now was enough for her to risk criminal charges. But what was it? I don't know, she stammered, wringing her hands. He instructed me not to mention my findings to anyone. Listen, I am not sure who told you that, but I am here to help you. I reached into the pocket of my coveralls, pulling out my ID wallet. I am a federal agent, and I am conducting an investigation into the murders of 9 Freedom Alliance officers. Flipping open my wallet, I turned my badge to face her. We believe Malcolm Danes or his twin are responsible. We need your help. Slowly Dr. Ramsey lifted her head, staring at my badge, then nodded. So what happened that day? I repeated, returning the badge to my pocket. Suddenly the color drained out of Ramsey's face. She blinked incredulously, giving a startled gasp. Twin? There are 2 of them? How is that possible? She composed herself, leaning back in her chair and folded her arms. But considering what we are dealing with, anything is possible, I guess. What exactly are we dealing with? When she didn't answer, I said, why don't we start with something easier? You were called to the scene. What was the first thing you did? My doctors and I set up a triage treating the most serious cases first. And when you got to Malcolm Danes, what did you do? I didn't feel a pulse. I assumed he was dead. I am sorry. I didn't know that he didn't have a heart. She stumbled over her answer, fidgeting in her seat. How can a human being live without a heart? He isn't human, Colonel Masters. I gaped at her in stunned silence, taking in deep breaths to calm myself. Then what is he? When I went to do the autopsy, I noticed that the place where you shot him was exposed. She picked up the water glass and drained it before continuing. I put him through a thorough exam and made a shocking discovery. Which is, I prompted, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. My patience wore thin with this, pulling teeth, line of questioning. He is an android. Circuits and chips instead of blood and cells, she blurted out, pouring herself another glass of water. My office doors slid open. Nate marched into the room, moving toward the desk. I put my finger to my lips and motioned him to sit. We must be talking about 2 different Malcolm Danes. My security officer found DNA and fingerprints at the first 9 crime scenes, I countered, shooting Nate a coy smile. I don't care what you found. The Malcolm Danes you shot that day was an android, she cried, rose halfway from her seat and slammed her hands on the table. And I can't answer any more of your questions. I have a family, a son and a daughter and a husband. I can't risk my life to help you find your killer. Her voice quivered. Nate and I exchanged troubled glances. My partner and I, we have a family too, and right now, at least one of us, is putting our life on the line to find this guy, to make this world safer, I explained to her, picked up the pictures of our family that sat on my desk and showed them to her. Now if you cooperate with me and tell me what you know, I will arrange for protection for you. If you don't, you risk this man killing you anyway. She looked me up and down several times before saying, okay. Tell me about the man who threatened you. You've seen Malcolm Danes, you've seen him. He is an older version of Malcolm Danes, a little less hair, grayer, more wrinkles. You wouldn't happen to know his name, would you? Michael Danes, Malcolm Danes' creator. He wanted them to be able to interact with humans. That's why he made them so lifelike. I think I have enough. Thank you so much. I will get you that protection, I concluded, ending the transmission. I made a call and arranged protection for Dr. Ramsey. Then I plopped my elbows on the desk, intertwined my fingers and rested my chin on my hands. I stared at Nate candidly, waiting for his response. Did she really say that Malcolm Danes is an android? He finally asked. I nodded. But what bothers me is that if the man we have in custody is an android, whose blood and DNA is on file and at the crime scenes, I curled my lips and narrowed my eyes in disgust. And who did I shoot yesterday? Dr. Manning definitely took DNA and blood from that person. He stood, gesturing for me to follow. I think it is time for us to visit Malcolm Danes and Dr. Manning in that order. I rose to my feet and rounded the corner of my desk, waddling toward him. Let's go. He grabbed me by the waist and kissed me. I returned the kiss, then broke away from the embrace. As much as I love kissing you, we have a job to do. How long has it been since you and I went on vacation? He inquired as we stepped into the waiting room. On our honeymoon, almost a year ago. And that was only a week, he answered, sighing deeply. He chatted about how we should take a vacation before the babies were born as we hopped on the travel tram and rode to the brig. I barely heard what Nate said. 1,000 questions rolling around in my mind about Malcolm Danes, Michael Danes, and the twin. By the time we had walked off the travel tram and into the holding cell area, I had already formulated a plan in my head. I quickly called Dr. Manning and told him to meet us in the holding cell area with his medical kit. Walking past the guards after signing in, I moved toward holding cell A, where a man laid on the bed with a bandaged arm and head. We meet again, I announced, slapping my hand against the cell bars. This time, though, I really am in charge here. He sat straight up and looked at me. Who's the guy? Your bodyguard? He made a clicking noise with his tongue and the roof of his mouth. Lieutenant Colonel Nate Masters, Nate introduced himself, stepped up to the bars and grabbed them. Bodyguard, he said, pursing his lips, no. She doesn't need me to protect her. Danes glared at me. You pretended to have something wrong with your baby, just to hit me over the head, he hissed, degenerating to a guttural rasp. His eyes blazed murderously, pointing at Nate. He's the baby's father, isn't he? What did you expect me to do? I asked in a cool, icy tone, ignoring his last comment. Who my children's father was none of his concern. You marched into my hospital room and threatened to kill me. I wasn't going to let you hurt me or my children without a fight. You killed my brother, he roared, rising to his feet. He shuffled toward us. He slammed his palm across the bars. You killed my only brother. I exchanged an amused glance with Nate. What's that look you gave him about? Danes demanded, drumming his finger against the bars. You heard Dr. Ramsey, didn't you, Jag, when she said that the man I shot that day was an android? I asked Nate, avoiding Dane's gaze, putting my finger to my lips. That's what I heard, Nate agreed, considering Danes. Care to explain that? That Dr. Ramsey is lying, yelled Danes, running his fingers through his hair. He moved from the bars to his bunk and back again. She's lying, I tell you. She's lying. I caught his eye, folding my arms. What reason would Dr. Ramsey have to lie? I don't know, he muttered, stopping at the bars again. Maybe she was paid off. You really think she was paid off? Nate prompted in a conversational tone, kicking invisible rocks with his shoe, glancing up at Danes. Who do you think would do that? Peering over at me, Danes barked, what about her? Yeah, she probably paid Ramsey off to say she shot an android instead of my brother. That's doubtful, Nate answered, looking at me and then back at Danes. She hasn't had contact with Dr. Ramsey in 9 years. He's right. I haven't. But do you want to know what I think really happened? I inquired, walking from one end of the cell to the other. When he didn't respond, I added, it doesn't really matter because I am going to tell you anyway. I thought you might, Danes mumbled. I think that you aren't Malcolm Danes at all, maybe not even your twin, but maybe you are Michael Danes, Malcolm Danes and his twin's creator, I theorized, continuing to pace from one end of the cell to the other. What? He laughed, moved back to his bed and laid down. Androids. Come on. That's purely science fiction. I peered over to Dr. Manning, who now stood against the back wall of the brig. His face wore an entertained look. Gesturing to the doctor, I regarded Danes. Do you recognize the man in the back of the room? Yeah, he's the doctor that stitched me up after you shattered that pitcher on my head. The android doctor that stitched you up after you pulled a weapon on the colonel, Nate corrected, motioning for Dr. Manning to join us. Danes gave Dr. Manning a slow, appraising once-over. An android? I don't think so. Dr. Manning raised his hand and opened his palm, revealing his menagerie of circuits. Danes stood, his face glazed with shock. He looked as if he were ready to fall down. That's not possible, he retorted, navigating his way to the bars again. You cannot be an android. I can and I am, Dr. Manning countered, shutting his palm. Then he looked straight into Dane's eyes. I know of other androids just like me. For example, I treated one that appeared identical to you in the hospital yesterday. He had a wound on his arm. I looked at Nate and Nate at me. The man that I shot yesterday was an android too. How was that possible? Didn't Dr. Manning say that he lost a lot of blood? Androids didn't have blood, did they? I decided to discuss the matter with Dr. Manning as soon as we left the brig. I put my hand to my head, nursing a growing headache. Dr. Manning, the reason I called you here is because I want to find out if this man, waving toward Danes, is an android or a human being. I do not see how that is relevant, the doctor protested, clutching his medical kit. The Freedom Alliance has reason to believe that he might be involved in Kohler and Bree Stetson's shootings as well as the previous 9, I supplied, rubbing my temples. The doctor put his hand on the pad next to the cell. After waiting a few seconds, the bars slid open. Once Dr. Manning stepped inside, the bars slid shut behind him. Digging through his medical kit, Dr. Manning pulled out a small Dian monitor. Attaching it to Dane's arm, the doctor pressed a button, and the machine roared to life. Dr. Manning scrolled through the data on the small screen, concluding, "He is definitely human, Colonel. His blood is a positive. He is a carrier of several natal deformity diseases. His heart and lungs are functioning at peak efficiency. Has he taken a bullet to the shoulder?" Nate wondered aloud. Dr. Manning touched a few buttons, then looked back at us with a confused look. "No." "Thank you, Doctor," I interrupted, watching Dr. Manning remove the Dian monitor from Dane's arm and replace it in his kit. I put my hand on the pad next to the cell. The bars opened, allowing Dr. Manning out. Once I removed my hand, the doors closed. "Just needed to know who I am dealing with," I told Danes, casting him a warning look. "I'm done for now, but expect another visit from us very soon." I spun on my heel and moved past the guard after signing out into the hallway. Once Dr. Manning, Nate and I gathered outside in the corridor, I clutched the android's arm as he tried to move past me. "Were you ever going to tell me that the man you treated last night was an android?" "I did not find that out until after I spoke to you," he objected, looking at me, then at Nate and back at me.